conference, and before starting, I'd just like to recognize the very valuable contribution towards the kind of creation of this conference and the kind of the lead-in that there's been in facilitating the ramping up of Olympics research at UEL. So I'd like to recognize the efforts made by John Locke. Okay. Particularly in kind of engineering, if that's the right term, the interface between academics and policymakers to make sure that what we're doing has impact. So that's been extremely valuable, and I thank you very much, John, for doing that. I think it's been a kind of really good conference. You know, I have to say we've been a very interesting bunch of people. You know, diversity of topics, methods, discourses, a very refreshing level of criticality. So what it's kind of confirmed to me is that, you know, this really is multidisciplinary, and we have to come together in multidisciplinary teams and from the different perspectives to kind of critique each other in what we're trying to do, so that we can find better ways of moving this whole thing forward. Yeah, so that's just my own personal comment on the conference. And the final keynote speaker, Professor Lamartine DaCosta. Yes.
There is one other. If you've left your bags over there, they can stay there quite quickly to 5:30. So. No, they're not there because we're first. So this session needs to finish on time.
Yes. Okay, so Lamartine's going to finish off this conference with the future of mega-event cities. That's what you said you were going to talk about. Better do it. And if we could go till about 1:15, so that we can engender some discussion, please. Okay, good.
Well, I was prepared to speak about 2 hours. I tried just to read a little bit, then we run to fit in the time available to all of us. It's a provocative paper and a collective paper. I have consulted many people to do it, and it still is a draft, and the intention is to improve this draft in order to have opinion from many people here present. So it's very provocative because there are anything new, but we need this in order to make the innovation. Science lives on innovation. So the future is constructed, not something that we have to dream. So the paper is a construction, yes? And but there's a scientific meaning behind this presentation. Yes, this is a position paper. Aims to overview the worldwide changing urban order on account that global cities are becoming the innovative context for sport mega events, legacies creation and development. So you can see we have a hypothesis. A better understanding of this factual claim may be drawn from occurrence into which the 3 finalists, candidate city to host the 2020 Olympic Games, Madrid, Tokyo, and Istanbul, and made appearance as typical example of global city. That's it. We have those cities here, and but we stop the innovation. Then what happens? Usually we should discuss the tradition in Olympic studies is what is the best city to host the game. But we just escape from this proposition. We compare the three cities, and then we inserted London and Rio. And there is a very interesting thing in this benchmarking, because a common thing, there are 5. They are global cities. There is something in common. And very interesting too, that this is a fact that we cannot recognize easily in our world of sports and in many branches of scientific knowledge. But those cities, they are not the future, they are the present, because they are overcoming the importance of countries. They connect, there is a connection among those cities. And the global cities makes the real, the future of understanding. There's another fact very important that was brought here at the beginning of this conference. It's another fact, maybe the fact of the 21st century, is that we are living in a world that we have now, for the first time in history, 80% of the population living in cities. So we have a connection among cities, and we have most of the population in those cities, and most of this fact is cities are becoming more important than countries. This is extraordinary. This is the first time that we are facing this new reality. Well, this is another map with concentrations, global cities. There are mega cities also. Mega cities has no same economic, communication, many other things, education than global cities. And there are 66 global cities. This is made of English Office of Consultancy, very important, Kearney Corporation, comparing all those cities. We have 66 examples of cities that can participate from now on the Olympic bid, because they have the strength, the preparation, political power, economic power, financial power, and scientific power to participate in the bid. Of course, the IOC is not interested in this theory, but now we are our studies are showing that really they are the reality, because the bidding of the host city, there are many cities in many phases. Why? Those cities are the final. It is happening now for 21 years. It's a very important thing. So let's make another hypothesis. They are the background, the contest of the Olympic Games and legacy. If we understand what is a global city, maybe we can have a better idea of legacy. Well, there is a practical thing about this. This is not a new idea. There are many other colleagues who have discussed this, and I think it's time to go to empirical collection of facts. And we try to understand this in this global city is Rio and São Paulo. You don't know, but Rio is not one city. There are two big cities together. They live together. The separation is political in municipalities, states, and those two cities. But the metropolitan area is something like Tokyo and Yokohama. This area has 42 million people, and it's the capital of the South Hemisphere. I can show a better thing about our studies about this area. It started in 2000 with Bruno Padovano, who is directing the connection with the UL from the University of São Paulo. They start collecting information, the areas between Rio and São Paulo, and they understand that there was a connection, natural connection. It was not political, more economic. This is another research, 2008, from economists. A group of economists discovered with data from economy that all the region is together. Business are usually connected with the area and the transportation and communication and the facility. It's easier to make business, and including the location of factories and universities and many other things in good position in this area together. This is the area now. Our investigation brought to geoprocessing, which is a new methodology to understand facts, geographic facts, and social facts, and economic facts, and now ecological facts. This is a satellite photo about that region. And there was a discovery in that region because there are three corridors of mountains, and all the region organized it by itself in those corridors. This is on the position with the population 2000, as you can see, and just compare with this. The population is not concentrated in the two big former cities, Rio and Sao Paulo. They are occupying the region as a whole, not in the central. This is really very interesting. That shows us that some reality that we can understand. If we understand this reality, we can also study the impacts of the Olympic Games and the World Football Cup. Here it's about Sanrio. Sanrio is an acronym, São Paulo and Rio. We understand now that there is a distance of 700 kilometers, that we can understand the impact of the Olympic Games or any other intervention that can make it in this region. This is very important because we lose the idea of city. We are moving towards the idea of region. This is a very complex situation because in the Olympic chart they speak about city, not region. But if you look carefully to the OGI, Olympic Games Impact Studies, they cannot collect the information easily, only circulating the idea of the city. They must collect the information with a broad view of the whole region because everything is connected. We understand also that distribution of population and environment are two variables, the two most important variables to understand a mega city or a global city. The theorists from city, they are saying this. So those pictures show that we are getting near the theory in order to understand better the concentration of integration in order to understand the Olympic Games. Here, again, Rio, and you find the 5 different points of decentralization of the big cities. This is very important because the studies in other regions of the world, like China and India, show the same effect. The big concentration of people are decentralized. So city is not the same thing that we understand for centuries. It's another thing. We are occupying regions, and regions with some coherence between the different characteristics of the region. Corridors. When we speak about environment and people, corridor is the unity. So there are 3 corridors in this region. There are mountains and forest. There are forest and mountains. And here is the railroads. There is a high-speed train being constructed. They are in the beginning because, and they don't know about Rio. Rio is not an official research. It's not connected with the organization of the games too. It's an independent research from universities. 3 universities studying this region. So this connection was planned because of the question of the economic influence, but when you put in geoprocessing map, it shows that they are in the coherence of the region. Again, the clusters, industrial clusters, and airports. There are 2 new projects of airport, it's not public, not belongs to the government, starting now in the region, and they don't know what is Rio. They are reacting some natural trends that businessmen and industry understand and try to develop and to meet the general trends of that region. Technological corridor. This is the main important technological corridor in Latin America, from Mexico to Argentina in the south. It's very important. We can compare only with some parts of the United States or Europe. There's a corridor of avionics following the corridors, and another near the sea of energy. And those studies shows that if you understand as a city, a big region, we must take care of many things. For instance, 200 kilometers from the place of the Olympics, there are a complex of 3 atomic energy complex. And in Tokyo, the project of Tokyo Olympics, they organize a structure of security because of the atomic complex. In Rio and São Paulo, in Brazil, they never mention one word about this. So, never mentioned. And when you put in the map, you can see they are very near. We must take care about the possibility to have some climate risk and some accident risk too. So it's very important today, any city, to have the idea of region. Okay, that's here we situate the position of the Olympic Games, and this region has a vocational trend to mega events, not sports only, but the other religious events, for instance. There is, in the middle of the region, there is a city with 500 participants each year of a meeting, a mega event. So it's a very extraordinary thing, because the Olympic Games is not isolated for other trends. This is the plan of Paris to Le Havre. Paris want to go to the sea because global city, most of them are connected with the sea. So the plan of Paris is exactly what Saint-Rio is. Corridors. Corridors. And the corridors, ecological corridors, not like Saint-Rio, the artificial, doesn't matter, yes? And technological and logistical corridor. So in Europe, in the future, we will have the same thing that we have now in Rio and São Paulo. The difference there is the hand of God. Nobody planned that connection. And Paris has a strong planning for transform all the region of Paris in direction of the sea. Here's some information about corridors of cities. We don't have always big cities, mega cities and global cities. We have corridors of cities, not in South America, Latin America, but in Europe and Asia we can find those corridors. It's a new thing, different from countries, frontiers. Yes. This is one of mega cities in China. They have three mega cities. They connect the different cities, former cities, with the bullet train, high-speed train, and they understand that those connections shape the region and brings a connection that it can have a better development. We have no time to discuss this, but it is very interesting because the corridors in Saint-Rio is just the same thing. Well, what we have done, let's see the project of Istanbul, Tokyo, and Madrid. No difference at all about the intervention in people and environment. Exactly what the theorists of the city they are saying. But those position of city is not explicit in the documentation in the paper that you can see in the future. You can, we just was from Istanbul here. Just a quotation, but also the same thing you can read in the report from Tokyo and Madrid. They are dealing with as a global city, but not formally understand by the requirements from the IOC. In summary, in one hand, today's global city are now an ultimate effect of the worldwide changing human order, looking forward efficient and relevant products of local and regional achievements in different stages of governance development. On the other hand, global cities have been reflecting the high priority given to environmental issues in local and regional governance. In this context, sport mega events are likely to prompt synergetic best practice into global cities management. It is a kind of conclusion, but it's a provisory conclusion. Yeah? Well, we can move now to the other area of knowledge. Global city. If you look for information, you'll be surprised with this. It's a fantastic amount of studies and research about global cities. So we have no problem about theory. And they don't think, this is very important now, it's a provocative they don't say legacy. All of them say about intervention in the city. What is this intervention? Positive or negative? What we call legacy is the positive intervention. Why they say positive intervention? Because there are many. Olympic Games is one among several. And another thing, that there is a convergence between the terrorists from global cities. The intervention, positive or negative, must have some influence in population and environment. That's the criteria. If we manage the city in this order of ideas, we can manage quite well. Maybe in the future, the Olympic Games will do exactly the same. Exactly the same. We're speaking about the future. Probably we don't think about this area of knowledge because we have our own tradition. We have our own tradition since Coubertin. Coubertin has created the Olympic city, but now it's time to find some way to be adapted to the world. It's not everybody or big cities to adapt to the Olympic Games. This, I'm sorry to say, but this is crazy. The Olympic Games must be adapted to the cities and also to the population, yes, and the environment. But if you look to the report of the IOC, they are speaking the same thing in other words, but not explicitly direct to the city, but they are directing to the legacy of the games. We have spoken about why it happens with the IOC. Because they are looking for legitimacy. It's different from the city. The theorists are thinking in the city, the characteristics of the cities, the work of the city, the management of the city. They are not looking for legitimacy. They are looking for theory, and they organize the government to make the intervention in the global city. Maybe the right way to deal with the Olympic Games should be the same. Interventions in the city. It's not legacy. Can be legacy in sport. In the paper you're going to see that we separate the summer games from winter games. When we speak about winter games, it's different from summer games because there is no global city in winter games. Usually they are little cities. There we could speak rightly on legacy, but in summer games with global cities doesn't make sense. Well, we have to go to some direction, and I try to find who is speaking not exactly on global cities. People from sports and people from Olympic studies. We have Saskia. She's a kind of big lady of the global cities, yes. And we find two, Holger Cross from Germany, the Mainz University, and Alan Brinton, who is here. I don't know if he accepted this, but we understand his papers is very connected with the question of cities. Why? Because he's a geographer. He has contact with maps and space and the reality of the city. He started thinking this way. Robert, let's see what happens with Cross. He developed a cube. I don't know if you know, this is very new. It was published, I think, 2 or 3 months ago. I'm coming to finish our presentation. We have no time to discuss this, and this is a beautiful issue to discuss. What Holger Cross did is involved with this problem of definition of legacy more than 10 years, since the beginning. He experiments several And I worked with him also to find the solutions for this with different ideas of legacy. He's economist. And there are always something wrong. We cannot complete everything connected with legacy. Legacy is a very complex definition to use to translate the impacts in a city as a legacy. So what Holger Frost did, he's not a geographer. What he had made a breakdown of three positions is a cube. One is the structure that you can see here, and another is the site, the location of the mega event, yes, and the branch. What they are doing? They are trying to now to put it in an empirical example. Yes, no, I'll finish. I know that you are controlling. I know. It's a very interesting thing. Those 3 days I listened to a diversity of interpretation, and I was thinking, if we put together some of you together, we could arrange those kind of group. Why? Because it's a breakdown of a phenomenon. Each phenomenon has several understanding and variable. It's natural to do this. So to manage or to make research of a legacy, the identity should be this. I think this is one kind of future. And I went to Saskia Sashin, and she doesn't like representing many lines of thought on theory of cities and new theories of the cities to have breakdown. They are simplified interpretation. They understand that you have to follow patterns and process, like the geographers used to say. This is very important because we simplify the approach. Let's see what happens next after this meeting. Maybe we have good news from everybody here. We don't know exactly, but I see this is a new thing in the future, and not so separate, not so far from what we are doing here in different approach. In other words, we have to organize our collection of data, but we have to follow some methodology in order to find for coherence of those variables. Discussing with the German minds, they say, what happens with the OGI, Olympic Games Impact? It is a system that we can, well, they have 156 variables. They are making it breakdown. We don't know. We think there are many variables, and they don't look for patterns. They don't look for process. The breakdown is data. They cannot put together. If they use those systems, those kind of methodology in the city, nothing will happen. We'll not understand what happens in the city. And probably we have to review this methodology of the Olympic Games impact. Well, there is a summary here. I compare Sashin with Ross. They are not mutually exclusive, being rather complements of each other. The meaning in this case is that sport mega event legacy may be shared by global cities if they are managed based with image bases. Here comes the proposal for the future. We can deal with the legacy if we make it in another way, not isolated, manage-based legacy. If you have this complement, we are safe, because to be manage-based, you have to break down in different parts the legacy, to understand how it works. So the problem is we use legacy isolated. So everything can be legacy, is the banality of legacy. We are scientists. We must understand the phenomenon and also to make it clear in our definition. So, manage-based as well as an outcome of excellent research or planning, components elaboration, as suggested by the Legacy Cube from Prof Idealization. I speak a little bit about excellent. I just have some comments about that, but I'll come back to it. As yet, most of the legacy conception and fact findings are a result from postdoc interpretation. We live in two worlds here. Some of you, postdoc, after the legacy, to understand what legacy. Another word, evidence. Evidence before the transformation of the city becomes a legacy. So we can use both methodology, but we have to know when and why. Our results from postdoc interpretation, either from research works or from history and comparative studies. This delimitation suggests a decrease of importance of the legitimacy-driven legacy insofar as the global city dominance springs up and develops the community. So the perspective is the cities will have more importance in the future. They have now, but it will be bigger. And the legitimacy driven used by the IOC will disappear. For big city, doesn't matter legitimacy. Any city must be managed, must have a governance. It's not a question of legitimacy. It's not a question of legitimacy. We have a false question, and I'm afraid to say that. I'm scared to say legitimacy is a false question in scientific terms. But anyhow, you have to face the truth and be patient, but find solutions. Just coming to the end. Accents. We have some comparison. Most of the legacy conception and fact finds are results from postdoc interpretation. I have seen most of you make this kind of approach. This delimitation, well, the decrease in the legitimacy driven because of the idea of the post-hoc is not wrong, but not to everything. Probably the best research work should be making the ex-ante position approach, because look for evidence. This morning I saw with pleasure the presentation, and this kind of evidence was brought to the picture of the interpretation of research and the proposals of the research. So the ex-ante studies, I think, is the future for the legacy and for the Olympic Games. Well, ex-ante studies is an option in my university. Yes, some of the students are here. They make presentation, hard presentation, very difficult presentation, but they did. And they working with the geoprocessing and trying to understand, to look for evidence of this area. This is Rio de Janeiro area with 4 poles. That's the Olympic Games in Rio. But to understand after the games is something. To have the OGI, it's okay. But we need information now. Otherwise we can't understand how to manage the legacy. Even we think we understand nothing about the legacy. They are creating things they don't understand quite well, the government and the sports institution. Well, finish, there's the picture, the present and the future. We are looking forward to see you living in global cities. By the way, this is what London is a very interesting place to speak about this. It was the first global city in the world, beginning in 19th century, and now is the second to New York, but is still there. And maybe the innovation the Londonians had made here in this city is because of the tradition of the city. They brought the Olympics, they respect the legacy introduced by the IOC, but I think you respect better the city. Otherwise, you should lose your identity. Thank you very much.
You do have 15 minutes to get you back to the extent. Half an hour?
Okay. Half an hour. Thank you very much for that, Lamartine. Have we got any questions from the floor, please? Any questions? David?
Yes, it's not terribly articulate at the moment, but I'm just struck by this great focus here and the analysis and the splatter of world cities, and want to work out how to think about that in the context of the hyper-local. Because one of the new things that's happened in social media over the last 5 or 10 years, and many of the stories that we've been listening to here are about the very small and the intensely local. And it's that collection of things which are very small and intensely local that stop us using our identity in the world cities. And it seems to me that forums like this, academic institutions like ours, like the ones that are collaborating here, have to be one of the important places where we understand how to make those two things connect. Because in the world of the megacity and the scale of this, the hyperlocal and the intensity of the individual experience, if anything, it gets to be more important. But the Olympic frameworks that we've been talking about, by and large, don't make that connection. No particular reason why they should make that connection when so many other things don't. But so it's not, I think, not even so much a question, but just an observation and a thought, and something that we might want to discuss now or elsewhere.
Yeah, I think so. I had this during the refreshments in the corridor. Fantastic idea, the scale of connections, because they are different. The scale of connection from the IOC is really different from the scale of connection of a big city, like Istanbul or Tokyo or Madrid or London or San Rio. It's very different, and this is one of the approach that can bring us the ideas to develop new studies.
Hello, Peter Vlachos, University of Greenwich. Again on this point, to follow up on the urban corridor, there's a lot of literature, and Richard Florida, of course, in the US, writing out of Canada, talking about the rise of regions and regional economies. But in many cases, these regions are, strictly speaking, ungoverned territories. They don't fall into the traditional structure of a state or of a city political mapping. Is this a problem, to have essentially an unregulated territory called an urban corridor, for example, in your view?
It's not my view. We can find the literature, and there was a seminar in the University of Rio de Janeiro, Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and George is here, one of the teachers there, and they discussed the question of Belo Horizonte. It's another city. It's becoming big, yes. They use geoprocessing too, and they discovered the difficulty to have a governance in the city. In the case of São Rio, you're absolutely sure of this. The government of São Paulo created a new kind of governance, metropolitan governance or something like this. They failed. But around the world, we are discovering many ways to have this governance. For instance, in this region of São Rio, there are two collaborative governments working and not promoted by the state government or the federal government, or what was organized by municipalities. One is one river. They have to control the river, and the municipalities around the river has institutions that coordinate the intervention. Another one is also in São Rio is for trash, because there is a big problem now about this, and a group of municipalities has a collaborative governance to distribute the trash in different areas of the city. In the process, the bidding process of that tomorrow ends, yes. Tomorrow we're going to see what the city was chosen to host the next Olympic Games. And Tokyo presented the way they deal with the megalopolis, the mega cities. They have governance in a different level of the other established government. I didn't know that. And they presented in the project as a solution how to deal with climate change risks and different intervention that the Olympic Games will bring to Tokyo. Very interesting. In the proposal of Istanbul, they also did the same. So there are people from global city or mega city, they are working in those projects already. They are already working because they try to find solution. But you're right, there is no, except in China. I think China is different. They have a control of those mega cities that we saw an example here this afternoon.
So does this mean that these regions, these urban regions, gain the benefit of a kind of an open marketplace without the responsibility of taking care of the sick and the elderly and so on, the homeless? So they get the benefits of the free economy without the burden.
The opinion is not mine, it's Sachin, the lady of the global cities. Sachin thinks that you have to give some freedom to the corridors, to the clusters, and the connection between cities. They must be free because they have better business composition. And she tried to prove, I'm in doubt about this, that, but I put in the paper, I will bring this issue to the paper. There is a synergetic relationship when you have the freedom in the city. And she used American cities as an example. And London for her there's many control over the government. Yes, but the American citizens, they are free. So she said that there is a synergy in this freedom to find the whole solution, local solution, inside a big complex of situation.
Lots of interesting ideas here that I'm trying to put together. I'm one of them at the University of Chicago. This is a little bit of a follow-up on the last question, but there has been some discussion, not particularly serious, I don't think so far, but of a joint bid in the future between San Diego, California, and Tijuana in Mexico. And so thinking about this idea of global city regions, I feel like that case is different than some of the other examples we've discussed because there's an international road running through the middle of the region. And I was just wondering what your thoughts on how that might, kind of impact these sorts of developments in the global structure and whether that could be a productive thing and how that might sort of play into the idea of legacy or legitimacy.
It would be a good test.
Yeah.
We don't know what the extent of freedom. Technology doesn't like control. They need freedom. Technology, innovation need freedom. So those corridors in North America show this position. Now is the big test because you have another city, another part of the city in another country. I don't know the answer for that, but I think we have to follow up in order to understand what will happen. Something that we must pay attention is the corridor in Asia. They are becoming connected with each other. Different Hong Kong, for instance, it takes part in the one of the big mega cities of China, and they are different. They have a independent government. They are democratic, but they exchange easily with other cities from China. That is a test, but I can say this is the final test. Maybe this one from the States and Mexico will show us some learning about this.
We're all here today really because we're interested in more sophistication and a more informed approach to legacy. And as we've just been saying, a legacy understanding which is more relevant to the future urban world. I have no idea about this really, but to what extent are the IOC kind of plugged into the same sort of agenda that we've been discussing here? And if they aren't, how do we get a bit more firmly into their territory?
One of the discussions I had was with Jean-Luc Chapelet. He's one of the authors, maybe you know him. By the way, he is in the hospital now. He is very profound in understanding legacy, probably because he comes from the Winter Games. And I just put the question, what do you think about this? He says, if the IOC are not going to join the international movement of urban change, they can disappear. Because Chapelet made a construction of numbers demonstrating the number of the cities are decreasing. But when I brought the idea of the global cities, the picture changed. You can have many more opportunities to have candidates for the situation. So the IOC is in doubt what the future do. The president who will leave tomorrow, yes, Mr. Rowe, is very aware about the difficulties of the future. By the way, Berta Cerezuela is here. And the Hoge Bros, we are, and our university we discuss very much about this future and what the leaders think. People from sport and people from the IOC, and we are going to make a research and consult them what they think about the future, because we know the difficulties. We know it's too big. This question must have a solution. We cannot put aside this, ignore the difficulties of a big, and you know very well this. And so we are going to ask them what they think. This is very good, because the academia goes to the other power to understand what they want. One of the hypotheses is that they don't know what the future, and they don't know how they want. One of the hypotheses, but this is unacceptable to academic people. We must ask them.
I think on that point, we're going to have to stop. If we can show our appreciation for Lamartine, please. And with these particular conundrums, we bring the conference to an end.